ento ein hologos kai hologos ein pros ton theon kai theos ein hologos. Well, today we are looking at a passage in John chapter 1, and let's remind ourselves that in the College of Pastors, we are looking at a total of 5,800 Greek New Testament manuscripts. There's about 10,000 of them in Latin, and then 9,300 of them in all different types of other languages, Egyptian, Coptic, that sort of thing. Total number of verses in the Greek New Testament is 7,597. So let's begin with the basics and take a look at this verse in English. In the beginning was the and the was with God, and the was fully God. Give you a moment, think through what should be in the blank lines there. Okay. Well, if you said word, if you said message, if you said news, if you said wisdom, you'd all be correct, because there's a wide range of meanings to this word logos. And of course, many people are familiar with a ship called Logos. Of course, here it's talking about something that is communicated by revelation through the Apostle John, to his readers, bringing us back or hearkening back to Genesis chapter 1. So let's take a look at it in the interlinear. Interlinear means you have both the Greek in black here, and then the transliteration in blue, and then the English subtitles in red. So sometimes I call this the interlinear Bible. I sometimes call it the subtitled Bible. NRK ein ha logos. The first line, in the beginning was the word, and then second line, and the word kai ha logos ein pros ton theon. And the word was with God. And then the last line, and the word ha logos, and the word was God. Kai theos ein ha logos. Okay, when you take that as a whole, this repetition of the subject, which is ha logos, it's not given any name. There's no identification as to what the logos is. We don't get there until verse 16. All right, where the name Jesu Christu is actually mentioned. He's now talking about how Jews think about God, the Godhead, the wisdom of God, the news, the message, however you want to translate logos, the word. Okay, in the beginning was a word. Well, that word was in the beginning. So there's no beginning, there's no new beginning without the word. And conversely, every time the word of God comes to you, it is a pivot. It's time to pivot. It's something new that is happening because of the divinity of this word. This word is actually identified closely. At first, he says with God, but then he goes on and he says was God. So let's see the whole verse in context of all 18 verses. Verse 2, the word was with God in the beginning. So here in the original, as you will see, he uses the word hautos, which is identifying not just he was with God in the beginning, talking about the word, but that this one, this male person. So it's the use of the grammar tells you that it's actually not just a word, a message, a thought, an idea, a logic, but it's actually a person. Okay. And then in verse 3, he says, all things were by him. And apart from him was not one thing, apart from him, not one thing was that has been Okay. So you would be right if you said made, literally. All things were made by him. And apart from him, not one thing was made that has been made. But in the idea, Judeo-Christian concept of made, when it comes to the Logos and when it comes to what he created by his mouth and, what God deemed as good and then finally very good, this is understood theologically as creation. So you could also put that word, all things were created by him. And apart from him, not one thing was created that has been created. Okay? So here in verse 2, then, in the interlinear, in verse 2, you see in that square box, that's the word that's being used, hautos, to show you that he was in the beginning, talking about the Logos, is not just a thing, a concept, a thought, a wisdom, an idea, a logic, a message, but it's not a thing, but it's a person, hautos. This one, he, in many modern translations in verse 2, he was in the beginning with God. So we're talking about a person, okay? And verse 3, more clues. He says about this person, he says, through him, panta di autu, through him, this person, came into being everything, panta, all things, through him came into being, agenata, okay? And then the second line here is kai choris, and without him, autu, came about, agenata, not even one thing, ude hen, which came about, ha gegonen. So 3 repetitions of the word ginomai, the idea of creation through this logos, which is a person, and apart from him, nothing ever came into being that was created. Okay, and then going on to verse 4, in him, again, the logos, again, someone who is personal, something that's personal, a person. In him was something special, life. Okay, in the Greek, the word is zoe. And the life, the zoe, was the light of mankind. So it radiated energy, a kind of a life force, which you can see in all of mankind. Okay, all mankind has a certain life force, a certain modality. That life force expresses itself through our giftedness, the gift of the Father, right? And you can see it in children, their genius that shines forth, even if it is unredeemed. If you have a child talking back to you, well, that's a genius, but it's just unredeemed. It needs to be brought under the submission of Christ, right? If you see someone who's able to, who's shoplifting or something like that, if in a redeemed situation, that person's hand, the gift of the hand or the gift of the eye can be redeemed. All right. So he goes on in verse 4 and he says, in him, again, the Logos was life. Okay, that's the word zoe there, was life. And what else? The life was the light of men. So you see the use of the description, the life and the light. So light word is phos, is as in phosphorus, is shining and it's burning like the tip of a match, right? So this life was the light of mankind. All right. And then now verse 5, and the light shines on in the darkness, but the darkness has not, it has not what? Well, if you said overcame or recognized or acknowledged or embraced or accepted, you would be correct, because the word lambano can mean many things, but it can also mean to master something and So this idea, let's go on to verse 5 in the interlinear. Kai ta phos, and the light, en to scotia phine, in the darkness shines. It radiates, okay, cuts through. Kai a scotia auta, u kata laben. So the darkness does not overcome, or the word could be mastered. The idea of kata lambano is the idea of not being able to deal with, not being able to overcome, not being able to wrestle and overcome and defeat it. Okay, so there is a resistance which the darkness will not toe the line, so to speak. It will resist every time. That's the nature of darkness, right? And light. That's the play on light and darkness and light. So what's the outcome, or the outcome of the light? In what way is the light being shown? Okay, in one way, after 400 years, you have the appearance of the PRO-PHE-TI-EA, the reappearance of the gift, one of the gifts of the Father, PRO-PHE-TI-EA, of the person in the form of John, who is able to decode and define the elemental things of God. And so a man came from God, whose name was John. Okay. And that word there is the word apostelos, okay, which means sent. So if you look in the interlinear version, you see here, egenita anthropos. Egenita anthropos, there came a man. Okay, a man came about. It's a Hebrewism. And then it says, having been sent from God. Apestal menos para theou. So in the study of Greek, it's just recognition of the root words. As you can see, we've highlighted it here in the red. In the case of ginomai, or egenita in the first word in the first line, gen, you see lots of words with gen, like generation, genetics, genome, things like that. It's, it's talking about a birthing of some sort or a coming about. And then in the first word in the second line, I don't know if you can notice, but there's an apostello there, apostle, from which we get the English word apostle. Okay. This apostle was a very, very special one. He was sent from God. He is an apostle from God. Para theou. It was prophesied in Isaiah, a voice crying out in the wilderness, prepare ye the way of the Lord. And then in Malachi, the one sent to reverse or inaugurate the reversal of the curse, lest I strike the earth with a curse. So here, his name was John. Anima auto iones. Now, I included the aim there. It's supplied an idea there. Okay, this one, he, verse 7, he came as a witness to about the light. Okay, what did John come to in what way did John come to witness about the light, or concerning the light, so that everyone might believe through him? Well, testify, yes. Actually, the word witness, martyrion, and its cognate forms, it's all the same word. It can mean to martyr, to be a martyr, to die for your faith. It can mean to verbally give courtroom evidence. It could mean, the idea is to shine a give evidence or testify or a testimony. Whether it's a true testimony or a false testimony, well, it is to be seen. All right. So let's take a look at this in verse 7 in the interlinear. How tos, this one, male person, this one came, elthen, as a witness, eis marturian. Okay, as a witness. And then he says, for two purposes. There's two sentences each begin with the word hina, okay, iota, nu, alpha, and then on top of the iota, there's a rough breathing mark. It looks like a sort of an open inverted comma there on top of the iota, the I there, okay? Whenever you see hina, it's a purpose statement. So he says that he might testify, okay, marturesis, hina marturesis, concerning the light, peri-to-photos. Okay, so that's the first purpose that John the Baptist came. The second was hina pantes, that all pistou osin might believe, that all might believe dia autu, through him. Okay, so in verse 8, it says here that he himself, talking about John the Baptist, was not the light. Excuse me, but he came to about that light. It's the same word, to witness or to testify in a courtroom about the light. Okay. Now, John himself was very famous, very successful revivalist. So much so that he couldn't meet in the city or the villages. He had to meet in the open spaces of the wilderness simply because everybody came out and everybody expected John the Baptist to be another Maccabees or somebody to stand up against the Romans. Well, no, he was a herald. He was just a voice crying out in the wilderness. He said, verse 8, uk ein ekainos ta phos. Not was that one, the light. He was not the light. And the scripture is so emphatic. It puts the word not, the negation of this right up in the front. Uk, not, never, definitely not. What? Definitely not. John the Baptist was not the light. But it says Allah hina martu rese, in order that he might witness concerning the light. He came in order to witness to the light. The word, take note, photos, photo, photon, many words in English have this photo, phos, photo construction, okay? It's very similar to the word phosphorus. Think about that as something burning and shining. And then he says, the true light, and later on he's going to talk about the false light, the true light, right? What is the true light? The true light, he says, who gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. And the word world, of course, in Greek is the word cosmos. So you begin to look at that, but of course it doesn't begin with C, it begins with a kappa, a K. All right, kappa, omicron, mu, omicron, sigma, cosmos. We'll take a look at that later. Look at first line of verse 9 now. Ein ta phos ta alethinos, the true light. Alethinos just means true, and phos means light. So when you put an article in front of phos, the light, and an article in front of true, the true, you put them together and it becomes the true light. Okay, and then going on to the second line, who enlightens, ha, photidze, who enlightens every man, panta anthropon, okay, panta anthropon, who enlightens every human person. This one, he was, and that's that first word in the first line, ein, was coming, and then you go to the first line in the third line, erkomenon. He was coming, all right, into the cosmon. He was coming into the world, eiston cosmon. So the true light, who enlightens every man, was coming into the world. It's not John, it's Jesus, it's somebody else. And of course, he doesn't specify, he's just building up his case so that you will understand the logic of his thinking, all right? In verse 10, it says, he was, talking about now the Logos, he was in the world, and the world was created by him. Now, the word in English, in translated, is cosmos in Greek. All right. So he was in the cosmos, and the cosmos was created by him. Talk about the 7-day creation back there in Genesis chapter 1. But the cosmos did not recognize him. Talking about right now, in the days of Jesus and Paul, and when Jesus arrived, they did not recognize him. They did not embrace the logos, okay, the message. In fact, they rejected him. And then he goes on, he says, so take a look at this in the interlinear. Ento cosmo ein. So he was in the world, and the world, kai ha cosmos, di autu, through him came into being. Okay, was created, agenata. And the world, kai ha cosmos, did not know him, auton uk egno. So he did not know him. That's the egno, is that derivative, that butterfly, or that thread that comes from a worm, a silkworm, a verbal silkworm, so to speak, a worm with thread coming out, and how you cut the thread is different. So in this case, egno is the sort of the thread or the cloth that was created from the thread going back to this particular caterpillar or this particular silkworm, gnosko, which in the Old Testament is talking about husband and wife knowing one another in a very deep, intimate way. Okay, so it was from the logos that created the cosmos, but then the cosmos rejected the formation, or the original source, the source from which all life and light came. Okay, sad, but this is part of the revelation. In verse 11, he came to what was his own, but his own people did not receive him. Okay, so that is a word. Lambano is a word of inheritance. So if your uncle gives you a letter, and the lawyer gives you a letter after your uncle dies and bequeaths to you a shop house here in Singapore, let's say, for example, well, what is your response? It is to receive. That's it, to receive the word, and that is the beginning of everything else in your life, okay? But here, in this case, it was not to be the case, okay? Among the world at that time, the Roman world, the Greek world, as well as the Jewish world, okay? Aista idia el sen. He came to his own world, his own people, whatever. He came to his own, and his own people, okay, kai hoi idioi, auton u paral laban, okay, and his own people did not receive him. His own people did not receive him. They should have received him. They should have received the letter. In fact, the gospel was a kind of a letter that announcing that the kingdom of God was at hand, right? And that this was the time for people to lay aside every weight in order to run toward God. Okay, so they didn't. The people at that time didn't. The Jewish leaders of the synagogue at that time did not receive him. All right, so verse 12, but not all is bad news, but to all who have received him, those who believe in his name, he has given the right to become children of God. And in verse 13, it says, children not by human parents, or by human desire, or by a husband's decision, but by God. Children not born by human parents. This is talking about human ancestry. We're not born again through human ancestry, where we come into a divine line, right? It's not human ancestry, it's divine ancestry. It's not human genius that brought us to where we are in Christ. It's divine genius. It's not human engineering or human doing. It's divine ingenuity and the will of God, because we're born of God. And then in verse, so we take a look at here, he says, as many as, hasoi, day, all right, but as many as received him, elabon, all right, from lambano again, right, as many as received him, auton, he gave to them exousian, the authority. All right. He gave edoken is derived from the word didomi. The root word is didomi, to give. So he gave edoken to them, autois, exousian, authority, and then to become is in the next line, children, tekna, theu, genesthai. Genesthai, again, is a derivative from the word ginomai. Okay, so it means to become or to emerge, or sometimes, it can mean to create as well. But here, it's the idea here is that he gave them authority to become children of God, and he further describes these as believing ones. To those who believe, tois pistuosin, in his name, aiston onoma autu, in the name of him. Okay, so as many as received him, he gave us authority to become children of God, which we didn't have before, and exclusively to those who believe in his name. So there is an active faith, an application of our belief. All right. And he further describes the born again experience. He says, those, hoi, in the blue box at the top left, connected with the blue box on the bottom right. Ege ne the son. Those who were born, and then, so see that like a sandwich, the top piece of bread and the bottom piece of bread, and then in the ham and the cheese and the tomato in the middle there, he says three things. Number one, he's born not of bloods. Okay, talking about human ancestry. Uk ex haimaton. You can hear the word haima, their blood. All right, not of bloods, not of the will of the flesh. Ude ek thelematos sarkos. Now, in the next verse, he's going to talk about, and the word became flesh. So don't write off your flesh. You just have to redeem the flesh. Okay. And once human genius comes under the authority of Jesus, it's fine. That's good. It can be used for good, useful. All right. But it's not by human genius or thelematos sarkos. It neither is it of the will of man. Thelematos andros. All right. So it's not the will or the decision of a husband, but of God. It's the decision of the husband. Allah ek theu, the husband of your soul, so to speak. Okay. So we're born not of this, not of that, not of the other thing, but born of God. And in verse 14, he says, now the word, the Logos, became flesh and took up among us. What did he take up among us? Well, the original word is skenao, which means he tabernacled among us. When someone tabernacles in the midst of you, he's basically taking up residence among us. Okay, we saw his glory, glory of the one and only, full of grace and truth, who came from the Father. Okay, so when we look at the interlinear, verse 14, we see here kai ha logos sarx agenita, okay, became flesh. Okay, and the word became flesh. Sarx agenita, and tabernacled among us. Kai eskenosin and min. Okay, eskenosin, it's the same word when the Bible describes a mother bird building a nest, a skenao, a katas skenao, to lay the eggs. And so what is the purpose that Jesus has well, it doesn't mention Jesus until later, but the word becoming flesh, what's the purpose of that? It is to build a nest in human society and restart the whole project of God's people over again through faith. All right. So it is here it is revealed at the apex of this revelation here in John chapter 1, verse 14, that the word became flesh. So 100% deity, 100% Godhead, right? Second person of the Godhead, and yet becoming sarx, redeeming sarx, giving dignity to sarx again. All right. Sarx is not something filthy and dirty. Sarx is the human receptacle for divine personality. All right. So, and he says, third line, we beheld Ethia Sametha, and we beheld the glory of him, his glory. Okay. The glory of the only begotten Son of the Father, the only begotten one of the Father. All right. Doxan hos monogenous para patros, the glory of a unique, it doesn't say son, but you can supply their son, huios, okay, from the Father, para patros, full of grace and truth. Play race, last line, first word, play race, caritas kai aletheas, okay, full of grace and truth. Now, in verse 15, he goes on and he says, John testified about him and shouted out, this one was the one about whom I said, he who comes after me is greater. Now, he's talking about rank or dignity than I, because he existed in time and precedence before me. Okay, and so John was more senior in the sense that he had been around longer, but not that much. It was just 6 months longer, but he was massive. There was massive crusade. Nobody knew about Jesus at that time. Everyone knew about John the Baptist. All the eyes were on John the Baptist. The temple leaders sent representatives from Jerusalem, faraway Jerusalem, on the hill there, city on the hill, to ask him, are you the Messiah? You know, or should we be waiting for somebody else? Something like that. And it was very clear here in the witness of John. Iones, Marture, John witnesses concerning him. Peri autu. Kai kekragen, all right, and he cried out, saying, Legon, Hautos ein, this one, again, a male personality, logos, this one was of whom, Han, Ipon, I said, the one, ha, hopiso, mu, the one coming after me, erkomenos, the one coming after me, all right, emprosten, predates me, or has precedence over me, or it comes before me, talking about indignity, all right, comes before me, because he was before me in time, not just in time, but also in dignity. All right. So the idea here is that John's very, very aware of his witness and that he is not the light. He's only here to prepare the way for the light, to be the forerunner of the Messiah. Verse 16, for we have all received from his fullness one gracious gift after another. It was literally grace upon grace. Okay, as we shall see here. Hati ek tu pleroma tos autu, for from his fullness, all right, he goes on and he says, Hemes pantes ela boben. All right, he says, we all have received, and he says, kai karin anti caritas, right? Grace upon grace, or one layer of grace followed by another layer of grace. Okay, so grace upon grace, peace upon peace. These are abstract nouns that you cannot just put it in a box and send it to your mother for Christmas. It's talking about things that are the drivers for human society. All right, that is redeemed in Christ by the blood of the Lamb. Verse 17, the law was given through Moses, but grace and truth came about through Christ. Now, this is the first time that the word Jesus is mentioned, right? In 16 verses, right? So it is the first time he says, you know, and it's in contrast. The law was given through Moses, grace and truth came about through Jesus Christ. Okay, in the interlinear, it looks like this: hati, ha, namas, for the law, dia, mo'u, seos, edo, the. All right, through Moses was given the law. And then he goes on and he says, Hey, charis kai he aletheia, and grace and truth through dia Jesu Christu egeneto, through Jesus Christ came about. Okay, so what was given at the time of Moses? The answer, the law, hanamas. What was given at the time of Jesus Christ? Grace and truth. And how do those two things come together? Well, it comes together in the fact that Jesus is a Jew. It comes together in the fact that Moses created the Mishkan, the tabernacle, which was at the beginning of the year, first, at first Nisan. And how do these two come together? Well, those archetypes in the tabernacle can be seen today through the gifts of the Father. And those gifts are seen severally. So, yes, Moses received the pattern on the mountain for the modalities within the tabernacle, but they were but shadows pointing to a time yet to come, or a time that is now, when the kingdom of heaven is now seen not in a physical structure, but in the way that we express ourselves elementally. All right, so this is the spiritual, or the more definitive understanding of not just pieces of furniture, 7 pieces of furniture in a mishkan, 7 archetypes rather within humanity for the edification of all. Okay, verse 18. No one has ever seen God, the only one himself. No one has ever seen God, the only one, himself God, who is in closest fellowship with the Father. Actually, it talks about the bosom of the Father, has made God known. So if you want to understand who is Jesus, you have to go to the one who is at the bosom of the Father. Okay, there's only one at the bosom of the Father. So this is certainly a signal to all the Jews that is now no longer, the highest thing for you when you die is to go in the bosom of Abraham. Now it is in the bosom of the Father. Okay, so theon udes. So this is verse 18. Theon udes eraken po pote. Okay, so the word order is actually no one, udes, all right, ever, po pote, ever, um, um, never. Okay, no one has ever, then eraken, heraken, has ever seen or put his eyes upon God. Theon. Okay? The only begotten Son of God, the only begotten, mono, genes, theos, huios. Some of the variant translations include son or huios there. This one, okay, ha, the one being own, okay, ha, own, eiston, kolpon, in the bosom, eiston, kolpon, in the bosom to patros, in the bosom of the Father. Okay, this one, he says, that one, kainos, exegesata, and that word exegesata is the word for exegesis. And what does it mean, exegesis? It means to show the way, to lead the way in the in the text, what the meaning is, and of course, allowing that word to speak into your heart. So thanks very much for your attention. And we want to make sure that you are familiar with John chapter 1, verses 1 to 18, and also with the bands 1 to 5, and level 35, level 34, and level 33 and 32. So we've got about 35 levels in terms of our vocab training, but it will be worth it. What you do now, you will understand later.